And good Friday morning, and welcome to another edition, end of the week edition of Analyze This here on your NP or station in the U.S. Virgin Islands, WTJX FM 93.1. We're yours truly, Neville James. It's a beautiful day in paradise. The haze from the Sahara dust is dissipating somewhat. That's a good thing. Hopefully, in the near future, we can actually see the outline of Western St. John, like we always do. So, let's get right to it, man. Got a good show today. Got Virgin Islands Police Department Commissioner in the house. And we also will be talking with former Senator Jenna Millen Young and our number 2 Commissioner Mario Brooks. Welcome to Analyze This. How are you?
Hey, good morning. I'm fine. All is well. But what I have to agree with you with the beautiful.
The Vista, the
yeah,
Vista.
man, it's nice. It's
it
really,
is.
really
It's
nice.
easy to come to work.
Yeah.
Let we situate you better there. The pillow behind you, right? The pillow behind you. Mean if you want to lean back in that day, and then we could fix the mic so the mic will stay. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Okay. Yeah. How's the department?
Well, the department is busy. We are busy.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, we've had a rash of really a spike in crime,
Mm-hmm.
and as such, we've had to make some adjustments. The situation in the St. Thomas St. John district, but nonetheless, we are pushing forward. The people of the territory deserve the police department being there, and as a result, we have to make the adjustments to ensure that we can, have necessary support out there as far as crime and law enforcement. So we're doing our thing.
No, you're gonna be here for the whole hour, right? You here till 9? Or I don't got get full call and leave and that kind of thing. So I want to know how to compartment the interview. Okay, that's what it is. It's not an interrogation, it's an interview.
No. I don't interrogation.
Yeah.
We're gonna do that one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we're gonna do that one.
Okay, good. That way I know I could save certain things for certain segments. Okay.
Yeah.
The one thing I like to do when I have high profile guests, which you are, is I always like to ask, how are you doing personally? Because people believe that once you have a title, that you're all about the title, and you're like Iron Man. You don't have a personal life. You don't have issues. You're not human. So I enjoy asking this question. How are you doing personally?
I'm well, and I say that to say, I grew up with a mom that told me, Mario, always look at the glass half full and not half empty. That's why I looked out when you mentioned the vista and the beauty. I looked at that and I had to admire it because it's actually true. It's beautiful. If I wake up in the morning and I'm worried about everything under the sun and taking on the stress, you know what stress does to your body.
Mm-hmm.
So I always look at the cup half full instead of half empty. We live in a beautiful place, one of the most beautiful places in the world. People come here, spend millions of dollars every year to come to visit where we live. So, and I thank God for these things. I thank God for our community. I could be living anywhere else in the world. I'm living here, and I'm living home.
Who is Mario Brooks, for those who don't know?
Mario Brooks is a son of the soil, born here in the Virgin Islands. I grew up as one of those kids that bounced around through the Caribbean because my parents were not originally born in St. Thomas.
No?
No.
You're a part of
one of those.
I'll always one of those? Okay.
Yeah.
Where your roots come from?
My dad is from Tortola, the BVI.
Uh-huh.
My mom is originally from Angola.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was born in St. Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to have a little piece of all of those islands, and I think that's what made me who I am today. So I understand the dynamic. There's a level of empathy there because I know that we're not, while we all may share the same type of community, we do have a lot of differences as well. But holistically, we are Caribbean. We're one big family.
Mm-hmm.
But to bring that back home to my point, we live in a beautiful place. The Virgin Islands is a conglomerate of pretty much almost all the Caribbean islands.
Oh yeah, it's a melting pot.
Yeah. So and as a result, it's a beautiful place to live. We socialize and so forth. And with all that, of course, there's going to be crime. And I hear the narrative out there, individuals talking about crime is rampant and crime is going. I have been around for quite a while, and I realized that any loss of life, any loss of life is a major hit for us. And I agree with everyone that had lost a loved one in this entire my entire tenure as a member of Virgin Islands Police Department.
Which runs how long?
31 years this year.
31 years.
Yeah.
So mid-90s?
Mid-90s.
Okay.
It hurts because I myself have lost very close friends to violent crime over the years. So I understand. I get the picture, but we have to, as a community, we have to start to come to grips to understand it. It's not a VIPD problem. It's a community problem, and we have a major issue when it comes to not only empathy. We're desensitized at some point, and on top of that, we have a sense of, and the term I'm trying to find the term. I use it desensitized to what's going on around us. But we see the things that are not going right, but we don't see the things that are going right. We have so much things going on in this community that we should be using to uplift us as a community. We should be thanking God for it, but we don't see those things. We only see the negative, and that is the things that I'm talking about.
Well, your appearance here today was advertised, so people don't send me questions from last night. You know what I'm saying? I go spread them out throughout the show.
That's fine.
Right?
That's fine.
Just to make sure that you don't feel like you're being bombarded, but you are responsible for public safety here in the Virgin Islands. Yes. That's just the rules.
Yes.
And all that stuff. Now, you had your budget hearing already?
No, that's coming up in August.
August, okay. As it stands right now, with man and woman power, where's the department at?
As far as we talking, when you say budget, you use the term budget.
Yeah, because I don't want you to have a budget hearing and analyze this and then do a budget hearing before the place most personal that I appreciate, which is the legislature, right? Everybody's an executive branch. You guys are executive branch people. I'm a legislator, so yes. I ain't really trying to take away from their, thunder. So I'm just asking generically. Could you use more man and woman power in the Virgin Islands Police Department right now?
Most definitely. And most definitely I can. And over the years, the number of police officers have dwindled. We've lost some. Attrition is something that no organization gets away from.
If you were to fill these vacancies, would it be a twofold benefit? Because we're hearing that overtime comes at a serious financial burden for the department. So, and there's a misnomer, and let me be clear with this. I want to make sure I'm understood and not misunderstood. So there's a misnomer that the more officers we put on the street, the less overtime we're going to incur, right? But before we get to the dollar figure, the more officers you put in the street, police presence, wouldn't that create a more sense of comfortability with the population? It
would, and I was just getting into that. So the more bodies on the street does, in fact, do that. Mm-hmm. However, and I want to also make sure people understand, there are criminals that, regardless as where police officers are, they're going to do what they have to do, what they think they have to do. We have to be there to ensure that there's enforcement, right? Police officers cannot be everywhere. So if I had a police officer I could put on every corner, and every turf, by every stoplight, in every event, then perfect. It would be a perfect world. However,
but before you go to that, I just want to make sure I get this right, because I've always been of the belief that police presence is a deterrent to crime.
It's a deterrent. It's supposed to be a deterrent. But I can name more than several instances where people were hurt, shot, and police were present. And I say that to say, I want people to understand the criminal have a say. And I don't think we grasp in that. If someone wants to do something, Mr. James, they're going to do it. Period. And then they're going to stand up and say, do what you want with me afterwards. And I challenge anyone to tell me or show me a situation where they've been arguments and fights, and you've not heard people say those very same words. I challenge anybody to tell me that. Because there's some individuals that are determined, hell-bent on doing what they're going to do. Whether high on emotions, whatever their reasoning is, that is what they're going to do. We have to be present to ensure that whether it's an arrest or takedown, whatever the case may be, occurs. But when...
But our criminals are not the same, though.
Definitely not.
I want to make
Definitely
that.
not.
You know what I'm saying?
Definitely not.
I don't just want to sit on here as a host and not push back a little bit.
Of course.
There are criminals who, when they see police, they think twice about wanting to commit a particular violation.
So let me add to that. I agree 100%.
Okay, good.
There's
You get me nervous here because you give me the impression that all these criminals are irrational.
No.
And I don't believe that's the case.
That is not even...
Because if that's the case, then we're in worse shape than I could have imagined before the show even started.
That is not,
I don't think that's the case.
That is not the case at all.
Yeah.
But I can show you, like I said, and that's just local. You can look into and the international in the international media. You can look nationally. We've had situations where people just police right there and they take the car and they run down people. These things.
No, I agree with that part.
And that's what I'm trying to get across to people. When someone is hell bent on doing something, they're going to do it. Right? We know once that happens, we have to ensure that we do our enforcement part. But presence always, it's always warranted to help deter criminal activity. Okay, period. Good. So I'm not going to take away from that. That's why I say let me make sure I clarify myself. So
if we were to have more people joining the police department, the requisite training, what have you, that would be beneficial to the Virgin Islands Police Department and the Virgin Islands as a territory.
Definitely.
Okay, good. We get that way. And then the byproduct of overtime and all that stuff.
You could work that.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, good. So we get that out the way.
Yes.
Right? Now, we've had some extreme situations, in particular within the last 5 years. Right? We had the situation, we had the ambush where a police officer lost his life up in Round the Field. Mm-hmm. We had the situation here in Ario Diaz where there was an altercation between two families and a father pulled out a gun. And this is like, I think, not last year, the year before, 4th of July. Mm-hmm. It was the 4th of July, though, I know that. Either last year or the year before, right? These extreme things, things that, I'm 61. I'm going to be very honest with you. They didn't exist when I was growing up. They exist now, and they exist way too commonplace. Why do we have so many guns out on the streets here in the Virgin Islands? And it's not limited or isolated to the Virgin Islands. I want to agree with you on that part. But it's way too prevalent for a society, a civilized society of 90,000 people.
I am so on board with you with this. So I just recently got back from Guyana. We had an association of Caribbean Commissioners of Police. Mm-hmm. And I'm a member of that association. And when you sit in these meetings, that level of information is shared because we have closed door sessions. And there's no difference in the Virgin Islands when it comes to the majority of these islands. They have the same issue. One of the recurring theme is that nowhere in the Caribbean, no Caribbean island, we manufacture guns. We do not manufacture guns. These guns are brought in. And there's a supply and demand in our community for whatever reason for these guns. And I say that I can show you, we have records that show the amount of firearms VIPD picks up on a regular basis over the years. Consistently, we pick firearms off the street. But as fast as we pick them up, they're coming back in. Now, there's a misnomer, and I'm going to use that term, that, the guns are coming in the containers. Those containers are being searched. They are searched, whether they when they leave the U.S. mainland and when they get here. Customs do their part. Now, is it container by container? Now, that is, I can't speak to that. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you, I know for a fact that they're being searched. Now,
your predecessor sat right where you are and told me that gun assembly is a big thing in the Virgin Islands. Is that still the situation?
That is part of it. Yeah, I was getting to that. So, but I want to talk about guns coming in first.
Well, the reason why I went there is because when I brought that question up to him, he was telling me it's not like it used to be, where it was all about guns coming in already manufactured and what have you. Yes. They're actually now gaming the system by getting them through the mail in parts, and then I'm assembling them here in the territory.
Yes, that's one of the ways. But I want to touch on this before I get to that.
Yeah.
The number of guns that were coming into the airports, right? Because there's a loophole, and I'm going to use a term. I hate to use that term, but I'm going to use it, where the airlines are not obligated to tell us when someone is bringing in a firearm. The people just have to notify them that they're bringing in a firearm, right?
Correct.
So
notify the airlines.
notify the airlines.
But airlines are not obligated to tell the government of the Virgin Islands
Correct.
what they have been notified by
Correct.
somebody bringing guns into territory.
Correct. Correct. Hence, you see at either Hera and Sika, Cyril Lee King Airport and Henry Rolston, of our police substations, and we make it mandatory. The last clear, you have to declare your firearms prior to coming in, and consistently.
So that's on the owner and not obligated on the airline, even though the airline is
Correct.
aware of the fact that the owner notified them that he has a firearm.
Right. They're not obligated to tell us anything.
The Patriot Act didn't address this, sir. Let me make a suggestion. Talk to your legal counsel to ask them to go through the Patriot Act as really, because I believe that was one of the aspects that was included in the Patriot Act, which was a big bill, voluminous bill, because that was in the aftermath of 9/11. But I thought that there was something there. No obligation.
No obligation.
When I was a senator in the first part of the first decade of the new millennium, there was a big case in St. Thomas where a passenger declared 10 guns when in reality, I think they had 12 or 14. I'm not going to call the name. I know the name. I'm not going to call the name because we're not into that. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Right? And that actually led to him being arrested and subsequently convicted. So, and I believe one of the things that helped the prosecution was an airline attendant counting guns and realizing that there were more guns on the plane than the passenger declared.
Correct.
So, I mean, working together, I think, is really what is the big issue. Is what you're telling me.
That's right. So, to bring it all the way back home again.
Yeah.
So the discussion has been had. We've been working forward towards that, and since those substations were open, we have confiscated a conglomerate of firearms. When I tell you firearms, we have, hundreds of them.
Okay.
And that's just through that medium. Yeah. That doesn't count when the officers are doing traffic stops and they get firearms off the streets and so forth. So now let me transition over to the firearms.
Well, the music come on, so we'll pick up the discussion right there. Okay. And by the way, my suggestion is that if you're going to a budget hearing in August, try to have the actual number of guns that you might have confiscated, right? Include that in the testimony so the senator them. I got a lot of police in the legislature right now. We'll take a break. Yes. Be back right after this with Commissioner Mario Brooks of Virgin Islands Police Department. And we're back here on Analysis. We got the Virgin Islands Police Department Commissioner Mario Brooks here in the studio, and we're talking about guns and the infiltration of guns into the territory. Good morning again, Commissioner. Glad to have you here.
Good morning.
So you were going to conclude on this particular topic because I tell you, make sure to get our data ready for the budget,
Yes.
the budget hearing, along with other things.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the importation of firearms into the territory, and then we talked about firearms being assembled here, which is something we have working alongside with the postal service.
Okay.
So we notified when those things occur. They have a process that allows them to identify some of those items when they come through the post office. But let me talk about what we've seen lately is an influx of what we call ghost guns, and these ghost guns they've been made without any serial numbers. So no serial numbers, there's no way to trace them. That's one, and then we've even had the few of those that were being 3D printed. Parts are being 3D printed. So it goes to show you the level of
Sophistication.
not only sophistication, but the things they would do to get these firearms. That's why I talk about supply and demand.
Determination.
Yes, the determination that they have to get these firearms. And when we look at crime and the usage of these firearms, we have to look at this thing holistically. We look at it from the preventative side when it comes to VIPD and the enforcement side. But I think more so the preventative side needs to come holistically as a community instead of just expecting the police officers, the police department itself to take it on. We as a community, we have to do our part. And I don't think we do enough when it comes to not only reporting, but assisting in deterring some of that. Because if I know you're living in my house and you have a firearm, that ain't working for me. Especially if it's not licensed, that's not working for me. So we need to start to do that. Over the years, I've seen situations. I can name a situation right now that happened on St. Thomas in one of the public housing communities. We had a bunch of miners running up and off. I think somebody saw those videos. Some of you may have seen the video a couple of years ago. Running up and on like they're playing Call of Duty, firing guns.
I saw that was that's what Harris Court.
I wasn't calling the name.
Well, I can call it.
Yeah.
But that was 5 years ago. That was 2020 though.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it happened. And when the detectives and so forth went into the community to do an investigation, of course no one saw anything. No one saw anything, no one knew everything. So how do we expect to curtail, how do we stop crime if we're not doing our part to assist? Okay, if my child was doing that, I'm telling you, be prepared, because I'm not protecting no child who's doing that stupidness. I'm not.
It's not that stupid. It's careless. This is reckless.
It's stupid too.
It's life-threatening.
Once those rounds leave those barrels, it's like a rock, you can't call it back.
This is true.
I've seen people that were killed by quote-unquote stray rounds.
Oh, yes.
Right in the same as a Harris Court area. The gentleman sitting in his trailer, 3 o'clock in the morning, watching TV, a round comes straight in right in his chest.
Wow.
We have to as a community, until we understand, we can blame the police every single day for everything. Why the police wasn't here, why the police wasn't there. We can do that all day. That's not a problem. We understand. That's when we raise our right hand. We understand. We understood that comes with the territory. And some of the blame does fall on us because we can do a better job. I get that. But as a community, when do we step up and do our part as well? When?
No, the buck stops with the police commissioner.
I know you're coming with that.
Right? So I just want to make that clear, right? No. You're a professional. And I mean, I'm going to be fair to you, right? I was a lawmaker. You happen to be on this show the same week when we had a high-profile case here on St. Croix. I don't know if that was coincidence, but it was what it was. Back in the day, there was a concern because juries were returning not guilty verdicts. There were also trials were being dismissed, mistrial because of evidence and all that stuff. I wanted to explain the process to the public so they have to the best of their ability listening to you, a detailed understanding of how the process works, right? We would prefer that there be no crimes. Right. That's not realistic, right? But once a crime is committed, in particular where gun violence is concerned, what happened? What's the first thing that happens when the police arrive on the scene?
Well, investigation is initiated. The first officer arrives on the scene. There's a process. We have a protocol. We have to cordon off the crime scene, make sure it's secure, for the forensic investigators. So when they come in,
that's the evidence part. That's the gathering of evidence.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's also twofold, because while the evidence is being collected, the photographs and these things are occurring, you also have the detectives that come, and now they're combing through the area, talking to residents in the area and so forth to gather as much information as they can.
What's the difference between a police officer and a detective?
The roles that they have, right? So
now I'm asking a question because I'm talking on behalf of the audience, so that's the reason why I asked that question. From a formality standpoint,
So
it's a distinction.
There's a distinction.
Yeah.
The detective, those are the ones that they investigate the crimes, investigate the cases. They're specific to a specific dynamic within the department discipline. I.e., you have domestic violence investigators, you have crime, criminal investigators, you have juvenile investigators. So they're specific to that specific discipline. Right?
Is it a requirement that in order to be a detective, you had to go through that police officer stage?
Yes.
That's a prerequisite, right? Okay, good.
But before, I'm gonna say this too.
Yeah. No, because this is an NPR show, so we're not in the melee in the business. Even though some melee sweet, right? We're really in the educational and informational thing here on this show. Right. So I want when you're done, because like you could dogs like to tease me all the time. I like to say when I done at 10 o'clock, I was more educated than I was when I came in at 8. I want that from the audience as well.
Right.
So
before you go any further, let me say this real quick.
Yeah.
Police officers, the boots on the ground, the patrol officers that
they show up at the scene, cordon off the area.
Are also an investigator, right? Because they have to gather that preliminary information to pass on to the detectives.
Okay.
So then them in themselves are also investigators, right? Okay. So just putting that out there.
Good thing. Now the detectives, they investigate, they gather evidence. One of the issues is the protection of evidence, right? And making sure that evidence isn't contaminated and all that stuff. How does that work? What is it without giving away the secrets and all that stuff? How do we do that so that the actual process of bringing this case to trial has not been undermined?
So the forensic detectives, professionals in the area, they collect the evidence. There's a process of securing it, how they bag it, how they seal it, and then there's a thing called a chain of custody. So if I collect evidence, you're the property room clerk, I turn it over to you, fill out what's called a property chain of custody form. It shows exactly who had hands on that evidence. But that comes to play later on in the case.
In the case, correct.
When you go to court, the jury wants to know who all had access to this. Because one of the tactics that defense attorneys use is, how do we know that's the same evidence, or was the evidence tampered with? That kind of thing.
And the government also has an obligation to protect defendants as well.
Correct.
It isn't just those who may have been, who may have lost a loved one, all that stuff.
Yes.
That's just how the law is,
it's supposed to be, yes.
Okay. Now, is it in the people's, I think that's the term that I use, right? The prosecution is the people, right?
Yes.
Is it in the people's best interest that the case comes to trial sooner than later because of the evidence dynamic? Talk about that.
Yeah, so the law does speak to that. Everyone's a right to a what?
Speedy trial. Yeah.
So the law does speak about that. And the longer the case takes, the more opportunity it has for it to dissipate and not come to fruition, right? Especially when it comes to on the side of the prosecution.
How prevalent is that with cases in the Virgin Islands? Is it too prevalent? Is it regularly prevalent, or minimal?
I wouldn't say it's minimal. I'd say it fluctuates between prevalent and too prevalent. And I can tell you, so since, and I can speak about my colleagues, since Attorney General Gordon Ray came online, we've had several meetings about it, and that's one of the things that have been at the top of his list, to expedite that process. But of course, we have to, that has to be, of course, coordinated with the courts. And then, of course, evidence, the case may be delayed because of myriad of reasons, medical, the defendant may not be able to come to court at the time. You have to determine if they're able to come to court, whether psychologically or medically. You have a series of different events that will cause.
Sometimes you get change of counsel and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, so those things come into play.
And you also have change of prosecutors too, and the government side.
Correct.
Right?
So Gordon has been done a really good job, and like I said, him and I have a very, very good relationship. We talk on a regular basis.
No, because when he was here, you actually called in because there was an incident done by the Mali project or something earlier this year,
Yes.
And you called in, and you guys had worked to see to it that I think the day before
Correct.
you had made some arrests and all that stuff,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Now, this high-profile case, and I'm just being candid here, 6 years ago was when the incident happened, right? That's a long time.
It is.
Yeah, and there was a murder involved. You know what I'm saying? Now, in fairness to you, not that you're exonerated because, like I said, the buck stops with you. We actually had two commissioners prior to when the case actually came to be adjudicated, right? I think Trevor Valinor
Yes.
and my family member Ray Martinez,
Yes.
right? So you're the third commissioner in the Brian Roach administration. 6 years is a long time,
Indeed.
commissioner, and on both sides, a lot of things can happen. Mostly bad things can happen over a 6 year period.
Agreed.
And this particular case I know of, what I mean, because the people involved, I'm aware of on both sides. And I remember, I believe Naomi Joseph is what's the teller right now?
She's a deputy chief.
Deputy chief,
Yes.
and she at the time was had made the announcements when the arrest was made and all that stuff about how the community got involved, right? Even though the arrests were like 3 or 4 months after, or 5 months after the incidents. That's 2019. We had the pandemic.
Yes.
And we've had change of leadership. A lot of things, man. We had a change of attorney general. Had about 2 or 3, right? I think Denise George and then Ariel Smith, and now we had an interim,
Yes.
right?
And then Gordon.
And then Gordon Ray.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So a lot of moving parts. I think that's the right terminology, right? How do we reinstill confidence in the public that the agencies that are responsible for making sure that safety is protected and preserved are doing their job?
So one thing with me, Neville, I try to do is I believe in transparency. One, I believe in being truthful with people, because not everything is going to be perfect. There are going to be times when we hit the nail right on the head right off the top, and then there are going to be times when we falter somewhat. There were myriad of factors that came up relative to that specific case you're speaking of. Some of them I myself was unaware of. I wasn't directly intricately involved in the case. I was assistant commissioner. I came on, I was lieutenant when it first happened, and then I came on as assistant commissioner under Trevor
Okay.
somewhat afterwards. So I know of the case, but I wasn't intricately involved in the case, so I can't speak to it. And even so, because it's still pending, I still can't speak to it. But we have to do a better job at the VIPD side. I can't speak for the AGs. Gordon would have to do that. But I can speak for VIPD. On our side of the house, we have to do a better job of, one, following up on cases. And when I say following up, it's not that we're not investigating the case, but we've since when Ray was here, we've stepped up our response to the victims, the families of the victims, and keeping them informed. We have to do a better job of that.
Okay.
And that's one of the things I know I'm very adamant about with the Chiefs.
And confession is good for the soul. A lot of people believe that, and like, for instance, I never forget this about the governor, right? In 2022, he running back for governor, and he spoke about, because remember, one of the reasons why he was successful was the hurricanes that hit. People had lost their homes, and the previous administration, they really hadn't, facilitated, right? Or expedited, I think is a better term.
Yeah.
And the governor, he did something that was apolitical, which is what you're doing this, which is good, which is saying, I haven't delivered, or my administration haven't delivered in that part. So you're saying today, the following up aspect, keeping the family and friends of victims and all that stuff aware of what's going on. We need to be better with that.
We have to do better with that.
Okay.
I have been bombarded over the years, over the last, and from the time I was assistant commissioner, with people call me and say, well, I ain't hearing nothing about the case. You're still investigating the case. We have to do a better job of that. Because sometimes the community just need to hear. They need to know that you're still investigating the case. We know you're still investigating the case. And the thing about a homicide is such a limitation on that. We know you're still investigating the case, but sometimes it just takes, just pick up the phone and reach out and say, hey, we're still working on the case. We haven't received anything new. However, we do have this. Did you hear anything that might be able to add to this? To
you just brought up something again that I'm glad you brought that up. And it's not limited to homicide cases. Statute of limitations. Educate the public or respect to that. Everything has a lifespan, right?
Everything has a lifespan.
Talk about it. Educate the public.
So
as well.
all crimes have a lifespan, all of them. And then when we're talking specifically to homicides, there's no statute of limitation on those.
Okay.
Someone is killed, when the determination is made, that case is always open. So we've had the fortune, and I use the word fortune loosely. We've had the opportunity also to close several cold cases over the years. I can speak of one. You may remember. I don't know if you remember Mano.
Yeah.
When Manu, remember, it's almost 20 years later.
Yeah, I heard of. Yeah.
It's almost 20 years later we were able to close the case. Yeah.
20 or something.
Yeah, about 20 years.
Wow.
So he was a good friend of one of my. He wasn't even a police officer then.
Yeah.
My uncle was a good friend of his, and when the detectives were able to close the case, he called me with tears. He's like, "My God,
Finally.
Wow. About 20 years. So these are the kind of things I'm talking about. So there's no statute of limitation, not because
With homicide.
with a homicide.
Okay.
Sometimes, believe it or not, we may have a homicide 10 years ago perpetrated by one individual, and then last week another one happened, and then some information come afoot from this recent homicide that ties it to the one.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. That could happen.
Right?
Yeah.
And then whoa.
It could be a gun. It could be a person. It could be a number of different things.
There you go. And like, boom, and then this opens the door for us to go back to that case.
Wow. Yeah.
So it happens.
And we're a small community. That's the next thing too. I think the public needs to understand. Right. Everybody knows everybody. You check what I'm saying?
I say that. You say that, and I think I'm glad that you say that. That in and of itself is a blessing that we are a small community. It plays for some instances for some. Oh, we know you look out for your friend, your cousin. Let's that rundown. Let's look at the fact that because we're a small community, we know each other. So we should feel more comfortable to have that conversation.
We should actually be looking out for each other.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? We're talking with Mario Brooks, the commissioner of the Virgin Islands Police Department. Good conversation this morning. When we come back, the last segment, we're going to get some fun in this segment. We'll be back right after this. And we're back here to analyze this, and we've got the Virgin Islands Police Department here in the studio in the form of the commissioner, Mario Brooks. Chicken hawks, devilry, or private school child?
Neither. Neither. I actually went to school in Florida.
Yeah?
High school, yeah.
You went high school in Florida?
Yeah.
We're in Florida. Okay, I'll go there.
Lakes, Miami Lakes. Here.
Miami Lakes?
Yeah.
You know about Miami Lakes, huh? The Palmetto? You know about the Palmetto?
Yeah, go over that. I did some time in those areas. Yeah.
Nah, man, I went to University of Miami, man. That's a nice area, man. Okay. Miami Lakes.
Yeah, he started college at Miami-Dade.
Yeah.
Miami-Dade North. Yeah.
Miami-Dade North.
Yeah.
That's 27th Avenue?
27th.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. You remember?
Yo, that's home, man. That's home, you know what I'm saying? Okay. What high school you went to?
American High.
American High. Yeah. Okay. Football is king now, man, this time of year.
Big
yeah,
time.
Yeah. We got Carla on the line. Good morning, Carla. Welcome to Analyze This.
Thank you very much. Good morning. This is Ryan Flegel, and it's nice to speak with you. Mr. Brooks, I'm glad to hear from you on the program today. Thank you.
Good morning.
I'm calling because I remember I had a meeting this was a few years ago with some of the business leaders in Frederickstead, and it was attended by the then Assistant Chief of Police. And the business leaders were basically peppering the Assistant Chief of Police with questions and criticisms, frustrations about policing in Frederickstead and the wider community. And after the Assistant Chief of Police just kept saying, basically, yes, I concede that's a problem. Yes, that's a problem. Yes, we don't really have a solution for that. That's a problem. I thought I'd ask him a different question. So the question I asked is, I said, can you tell us what the Virgin Islands Police Department does well? And he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, if you give us the evidence, the suspect, the location of the suspect, and the crime that was committed, we can go and make the arrest. And I'm frustrated because in my experience, what I've seen with the police is that they can't even do that. And I think this speaks to a larger problem, which is we're dealing with one of the highest incidences of gun violence in the territory. This is affecting our community in really important and dramatic ways. And over again, what I hear of the reasons why we have such high gun violence is it's retaliatory. We hear that was somebody else settling a score or a grudge. And in my opinion, if we don't have a working system of justice in our community, then the default is the street justice. And this is a problem that I think is really not being taken seriously enough by the police department right now in order to care for the community and see the issues that are happening with gun violence really put to an end. It's one thing to say, hey, I'll investigate a crime when somebody's killed. It's another thing to say, let's go after the repeat criminals on the island who are robbing people over and over again, who are peeping toms or, quite frankly, masturbating outside of people's windows or assaulting people. And when I see that those types of crimes are dismissed or brushed aside by the police department, I'm concerned that what happens overall through the community is that we have a problem where retaliation takes place as kind of the default. It's known that the police won't do their job, so somebody else has to take action.
Carla, let's let the commissioner speak to the retaliatory dynamic, and if in fact what the caller said is accurate. I believe it is, but I think you would have the data and you would know. So, Commissioner.
Yeah. So he asked a myriad of questions, to be honest with you, to his statement.
Yeah.
But to the one that you're mentioning relative to retaliatory, we've seen that. We have seen a series of retaliatory over the years, homicides.
But it's not just a retaliatory. The caller said as a default because they've lost confidence in the police department.
And this is where I'm getting to.
Absolutely.
I've seen, I've seen where, and I have been on the scene where I've seen individuals, detectives, and I say that to say, this has been a promulgated issue over the years, and it's built to where it's at. And I'm going to use that term. I'm going to say that very clearly. It's been built up over the years, and I would say that you can't not give the officer or the detectives an opportunity to solve the case. And and I'm not going to blame the public for that, because that is the result of years of frustration. I get it, but you have to give them an opportunity to investigate the case. Because I've seen detectives sit with family members of victims, and I had nothing to say. I gonna deal with it myself. But so you're not giving them the opportunity to assist. You're not giving them the opportunity. We have crime stoppers. We have these different avenues that you can submit information anonymously to assist. And crime stoppers have been quite lucrative for us when it comes to assisting. We have received numerous tips about individuals carrying guns. Individuals have been involved in homicide and stuff, and we followed up on them, and they were tangible. But we have to give them an opportunity as well. But I don't blame the community holistically for that, because it's been built up over the years. That they have seen, they've seen that maybe it's not to what we spoke of before. Maybe it's not moving fast enough. The investigation isn't moving fast enough. They've seen individuals still walking on the street. But there'll be a myriad of reasons why that individual is still out. Because, again, until we have tangible information that we can take to the judge and say, hey, I need a warrant for his arrest, we can't touch him, because we only got one shot at this, right? You only got one shot to pick this guy up and take him to court. After that, it's through the door.
Carla, you want to wrap up the question? Because there's a follow-up I want to ask you, because everything isn't on the police department. There's also the Department of Justice that play a part in this as well.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you. I actually, and I could tell you about the Department of Justice from my experience in jury duty last week too. But yes, Mr. Brooks, when you say that, we need the community and the community needs help, of course we do. But I hear this from the police all the time, and it falls a little flat for me, because I see the community step up and provide information for the police department, and then the police department not follow up on it. And I know for me, and again, I'm speaking about when we see repeat criminals who are robbing people over and over again. And there's a great example of this right now. WTJX News wrote a story back in, I think it was February or something, about somebody with a stash house in Frederickstead. The police took 2 or 3 months to go and search the place after there was a stolen property found at the house, and the police actually were there to help recover the stolen property, but then didn't get a search warrant or didn't do anything about it afterwards. And I can tell you, just this week, same exact house, same exact robber, but this time I provided the police with video surveillance. I provided the police with the suspect's name. I provided the police with the picture of the suspect, with picture of him stealing what he took, and with a picture of the stolen good at the place that it was taken to. And that was a week ago, and there's no warrant, there's no arrest, there's no anything. And this is somebody who has been, the reason I knew it is because this is somebody who's been robbing houses up and down the west end of St. Croix over and over again for years. This is the same person that the police department are well aware of, because they've got Facebook videos seeing him get beat up in vigilante justice from people who he's robbed. And they're concerned about it. But can we actually get action? Can we take action? It's not a question of we need the advocacy from the community. The community has stepped up. What we need is the police to actually do their job and wrap this up and work with the Justice Department to make that happen.
Thank you very much for your contribution and your question this morning, Carla.
Thank you. I really appreciate you allowing me to have
No. We're good with that.
It's a really important issue, but I think that sometimes when we talk about this, it's easy for somebody in power to sort of say, say from the authority perspective, hey, this is happening or that's happening, and nobody wants to speak up, and there's good reason why nobody wants to speak up. Because you speak up, you become a target, and then and nothing happens anyway. Why bother? Why stick your neck out if nothing's going to happen?
Well, I have a follow up question. I have a follow up question I wanted to ask based on what you said. So thank you very much for your call this morning, and that's not a problem.
Yeah, thank you for the call.
One of the big issues, Commissioner, is cameras, surveillance. Where are we in the Virgin Islands with respect to that? The governor talks about this all the time. If we were to use a percentage of where you feel that we should be to cover the Virgin Islands, would it be 10%, 40, 70, 90? Where should we be? Where are we, and where should we be?
So I'm gonna start that question with, I would love to put a camera in every corner, in every community.
Mm-hmm.
We have we have cameras all, without giving me a definitive number, we have hundreds of cameras across the territory.
Okay.
One, we've done a port.
Should that be thousands?
I wouldn't say we hit thousands yet.
No. Should that be?
It should be thousands.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I say. If you could put a camera in every corner, we would.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with that. What we've done is a poor job of letting the public know that these cameras have assisted in arrests, assisted in investigations.
Mm-hmm.
We've done a poor job of that, and we need to do a better job of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But believe it or not, these cameras have aided us in a myriad of cases, and we have analytics built into those cameras that assist us when we're doing the searches and so forth. So now if someone has to sit there in front of the camera for 8 hours just combing, we have analytics that allow us to do this. That's one. I mentioned that we do a poor job, and we have a new communications director, something that we're pushing forward to ensure that when we put in those announcements out, whether it's on Facebook or website, that you'll see in there as a result of the camera's surveillance, we're able to get X-rays, because the people need to know. And I think that in and of itself, letting the criminal know that we're watching them, that makes a difference as well, right? So realistically, yes, I would love to get thousands, but we do have a myriad of cameras, hundreds of cameras across this territory that aid us on a regular basis.
Do we have enough police presence in our schools?
No, we do not.
Does the law require that there be police presence at all public schools, to your knowledge, or is that something that the police department makes available?
We make it available, but there is something that speaks to it. Yes, I can't give you the exact quote right now. But let me say this.
Yeah.
We are working with education on that. That is something that's being worked on as we speak. And I'm pretty sure you saw the bill that went before the Senate the other day.
And the reason why I ask that is because the retaliatory dynamic is really about turf, right? We come from this part of the island, you come from this part of the island, blah, blah, massive, all that stuff. So that's the reason why I think if we were to let them know from in the schools, right, that you got to respect the law, I think that would work.
But we also have to,
because we're in the deterrent business.
Yes, I'm glad
education and deterrent.
Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned that as well. Because while we're in the school, while we're on the topic of the school, and I want to get back to the gentleman real quick to touch on him. So after this, let me talk about the school first. While we're in the topic of the school, we need to also in the schools we need to ensure that we're breaking those that gang.
That's why I asked.
We need to break that up.
Yeah,
we need to start. I'm my good friend Rashidi. A few years ago, had a program playing basketball in the different communities.
Rashidi Clements,
yes. And he would take, it doesn't matter, you could be turfing with this one, police presence was there, we'll make sure that nothing occurred. And we'll take them into different communities to play basketball. Our young people have to see that we're all the same. We have to see that, we have differences in certain things, but we have to understand that we are all one, we're a family. And if we bring programs like that, that's why we have PAL back online. We bring in the cadet program.
So we got a police allegedly?
Yes, we have.
Back in business?
Both summer programs in both districts
that's
are
awesome.
Full-fledged right now.
That's awesome.
And we're both full to capacity in both districts. Good. The cadet program in St. Croix graduated several individuals last year and again this year, and we're working at it on St. Thomas. But those are VAPD run. But I'm talking about a community member like Rashidi who came with such an awesome idea to bring these students, these young people together, so they could see and play amongst each other. And that breaks that tension. Because if I'm playing basketball, I take up my frustration on the basketball court. We beat you, man. Come back next year and beat us. That kind of thing. And those are the kind of programs we need more of. We're doing it with what we're doing with the cadet program. We're centralizing it, Complex High School and Udorcan and St. Thomas. And the plan for that is to bring the kids from the different schools who are interested in being in the cadet program all together. Because if the schools, if they're turfing with each other, once they know each other, we are hoping that, these kids can start to find ways to dissipate their issues with each other. But, once I get to know you, I realize, hey, Neville is a good guy, man. It's cool,
Well, he is a good guy, right? No, I'm just kidding. Another question that I got, crime solving training for detectives. I specifically asked you if you had to go through the police officer phase to get to detective. Is there things that they're doing after they get to the detective level to continue mastering the ability to solve crimes?
So they do have follow-up courses, follow-up training, service training, and so forth.
Because you mentioned analytics, because we're in a highly technological world, the criminal element, they're finding ways to undermine the laws.
Right. So we have a very robust training division, and what I truly enjoy about Virginia Police Department is we take opportunities when it's given to us. So if, let's say, detective runs into, he's traveling away at a conference or whatever, and I've done it myself, and I ran into a training that I know is going to benefit the detectives. I forward it on to whether the chiefs or the commanders or the training officer in charge, and they look at it and, hey, this is something we could give our guys some additional training.
So you're looking at setting aside funds to allow for
always. We have a training budget when we take our
continued training
yes.
and further development as police.
And I will tell anyone, Virginia Police Department officers, when they leave here and they transition to the States, they excel. Why? Because we train them in everything.
But we don't want them to leave.
We don't want them to leave.
We want them here.
Show you that
like
when
I
they
said
do.
over there, want to have. Right?
Well,
Them yacht. Ready to stay yacht.
Agreed.
You'll check.
But when they do,
because this is paradise.
Correct. But when they do, though, I just want you to know that they excel.
I understand that. No.
Okay.
One
So
thing
we
we'd brag about on this
Yes.
show is the Virgin Islanders' ability to make their mark outside the territory.
Very robust.
And that's good.
We're very robust.
Commissioner, thanks for making some time to come in this morning. Looking forward to talking with you again.
Yes.
Have fun at the budget hearing. And I don't give you some advice already so you could deal with your police officers, senators, and all that good stuff. And looking forward to talking with you again.
Thank you.
You got it. Mario Brooks from out of the Rock, Commissioner of Virgin Islands Police Department. Thank you very much. So we'll be back after this.
The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.